In God we trust. It's the motto that we find on the back of our currency, right? If you can see that little phrase right there, it says, in God we trust. We've all seen it a million times, haven't we? It's on the front of our coinage, in God we trust. Did you know the first time that that was used as a motto for our coinage was in 1864 when they stuck it on the 2-cent piece, emblazoned it with the phrase, in God we trust. And it's been on our coins and currency ever since. 1864, if you'll recall, was the height of the Civil War. It had been dragging on for years. Tens of thousands of people more had lost their lives in this battle, and the nation had nearly bankrupted itself as they fought it. Of course, the Confederacy, the South, they were out of money, and the North, they no longer had the gold to back their money like they did, and so President Abraham Lincoln issued an emergency currency that was no longer backed by gold. They called it greenbacks, and it was in place and used for several years during the latter part of the Civil War. But it was this idea, in God we trust, that I want to talk about, because it was an important moment in history. Now, those who are cynical will just say, well, this was just Congress's way of trying to dupe the people once again and cheat them out of their money, and into believing that their money had value that it really didn't have. Others will say, no, they were trying to get their focus right. But whatever the situation was, we still have that as our motto today. We fast forward 160 years from that point of 1864, and while we still have on our currency, in God we trust, you have to ask, does the nation really trust in God? You see, that there seems to be as much conflict and animosity between American citizens, if it's possible, as there was during the Civil War. And there are even people talking about civil war today. We just had an election, and some people got their guy, some people didn't. Some people are really happy. They think this person is going to solve all their problems. Others think that they're going to cause all their problems because their person would have solved them all. They were convinced, but that's not right. In the 118th Psalm, this is what this is what the psalmist said. We're not sure who wrote the 118th Psalm. It's better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in man. It's better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in princes. Well, it does seem like we are tempted to trust in princes to rescue us from everything that we think ails us. And again, in America, we go to the polls every 4 years and we vote for the prince that we think will save us. All too often, we put our trust in him or her, thinking that they're going to be able to solve all the problems. But men have never been able to solve all the problems. As a matter of fact, the only thing it seems like men are capable of is creating the problems in the first place. In the 56th Psalm, it says this: in God I trust. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? This is where our trust has got to be. This is why the motto that's on our coinage and currency is so appropriate. It's not because it's necessarily good to tie God to our money system, but it's not a bad reminder that it's not money that we ought to be trusting in. In the 13th chapter of Hebrews, verse 5, it says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you. So we say with confidence, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? The writer of Hebrews goes back and quotes the 118th Psalm. But he begins by saying, keep your lives free from the love of money. When it comes to our trust and what we trust in, it seems like in modern times that we have put way too much emphasis on the physical. We've put way too much emphasis on how much money we have, because we think if we could only get enough money, then we could take care of ourselves. But The problem with that is, you have to admit, there's never enough money, is there? Even when we're doing pretty well, we'd like more money. And that's why God reminds us to keep our lives free from that. It needs to be God we trust in, not our money. It needs to be God whom we trust in and not the prince of the day. If we can get that priority right, I believe that we can begin to straighten things out by straightening out our own lives. Because once we truly do trust in God, we don't worry so much about what the other side's prince is doing. And while we certainly have concerns because things that wicked people do can affect us, in the end, it's God who can take care of us. And if God is for us, no man can be against us. And while man can cause mischief in this world, and while men can cause some physical angst and sorrows in our life, when it comes to the eternal, only God can control that. And if we'll put our trust in Him, even though this life is difficult from time to time, someday we're going to be with Him forever. And all these princes of the world, all these men and women whom men have put their trust in, well, they'll go by the wayside. And the only thing will matter at that point was, who did we put our trust in? Did we put our trust in money, which can't save anything? Did we put our trust in men who let us down continually? Or do we put our trust in God, who will always take care of us, who will always give us the opportunity to have whatever we need, and who will always rescue us from evil men if we will just let Him and if we'll trust Him enough to do so? Who do you trust in? Do you trust in princes? Do you trust in money? Well, these things are only going to last as long as things are going your way. But if you'll trust in God, and if you can allow Him to rule and influence your life, and if you can help others to begin to trust in God, maybe that'll ripple out far enough to where society can change. And instead of trusting in money and trusting in men, maybe we can start trusting in God again. And once we do that, well, things will work. But until we do that, we're just doomed to go down the path we've been going down for so many years. Where is your trust today? If it's in men, you've probably been sad in recent years. You've been let down. Why not try this? Instead of trusting in men to fix what's wrong in your life, why not start trusting God? And once you do that, I believe you're going to find that your life, once it gets back on the right track, becomes pretty good. As a matter of fact, it will become filled with joy, and then someday there will be heaven. But it's only for those who trust in God, not for those who trust in men or something as weak as money. I hope that gives you something to think about. I appreciate your tuning in today, and I hope we'll see you tomorrow. God bless.